Joining me now, former White House National Security Advisor during President Donald Trump's first term, Ambassador John Bolton. Okay, they're close. Maybe they can come up with a framework. Let me start with this question. For 7 years, Iran's supreme leader basically froze out diplomacy, right? He was not open to this. Why now? And is it to be trusted?
Well, because Iran has suffered terrible setbacks since the Hamas attack on Israel on October the 7th, 2023. Hamas has been decimated. Hezbollah has been decimated. The Houthis have taken a number of hits. The Assad regime in Syria has fallen, and a regime that may be a terrorist regime, but is certainly anti-Iran, has taken its place. And Israel has flattened Iran's ballistic missile production facilities and at least one suspected nuclear facility. So Iran is in deep trouble. Its oil exports have been somewhat effectively sanctioned, not enough, but they're feeling a lot of pain. So they'd love to have a process that they think would preclude Israel from destroying the nuclear weapons facilities. I don't think they can be trusted. There's no evidence whatever that they have given up their strategic decision to achieve nuclear weapons. And I think what they're doing is classic Iranian diplomacy, trying to buy time.
Well, President Trump's analysis is that right now this can go one of two ways. Let me play what he said.
I think we're getting close to maybe doing a deal without having to do this. There's two steps. There's a very, very nice step, and there's a violent step. The violence like people haven't seen before. And I hope we're not going to have to do this. I don't want to do the second step.
What do you take that to mean, the second step? And is that threat, promise, however you want to phrase what he calls, the violent step, the reason that the nice step might happen?
Well, as I've heard the terms of the deal, just described by your reporter, it is a return to the 2015 Obama nuclear deal, which the United States under Trump correctly withdrew from in May of 2018. I think Trump would be humiliated if he effectively signed the same deal. Now, there are going to be some different terms because this is 10 years later. But the idea of allowing Iran any kind of uranium enrichment capability is a fatal mistake. And the Iranians said for many years they would never sign a deal unless they were allowed to enrich uranium. That is exactly the last thing they should be allowed to do. So I think for Trump to get into the deal effectively that he withdrew from would be a real political problem for him. The other alternative is to destroy the nuclear weapons efforts that Iran is putting together. And, it would not be violence like we've never seen before by what's known publicly. There are 17 remaining Iranian nuclear facilities. We know exactly where they are. So do the Israelis. We can debate about exactly how to take them out. But that is not a general war. It doesn't mean unleashing chaos in the Middle East. The Gulf Arab states would welcome the elimination of Iran's nuclear weapons program. And that may be the decision that faces Israel, whatever Trump does with the deal.
Let me ask you about another hotspot. The president said he'd consider going to Turkey tomorrow, a day after these key talks are supposed to start between Russia and Ukraine. It looks like the talks are going to start, but, Putin didn't show. And Ukrainian President Zelensky is in Turkey. And this is what he said when he was leaving the airport.
I'm here. I think this is very clear message.
I'm here. I think this is a very clear message, is what he said. Instead of going, President Putin sent a low-level delegation to Turkey. Now President Trump is saying, well, if I'm not going to go, Putin wasn't going to go. It has to be the two of us. What do you see is happening here?
Well, I think Putin is pushing the edge of the envelope with Trump on how much he can ignore what Trump is saying about getting some kind of negotiation started. Putin has already received enormous concessions from Trump. And I would think he wants to be a little bit worried about pushing his luck too hard. I don't think it would hurt him to start negotiations with a ceasefire along the current battlefield lines, because after protracted negotiations that don't reach any result, Putin would have a new de facto border with Ukraine controlling more than double the territory he controlled before the 2022 invasion. That's not how Putin's playing it. I think he's, as I say, he's pushing maybe a little bit farther than is good for his own interest. But so far, we haven't seen a reaction from Trump. I think the chances of Trump going to Turkey without Putin there are between slim and none.
Yeah, so what happens? Because the Kremlin has said there's no plan for any meeting anytime soon. So where does that leave things?
Well, Trump has said, and I guess we'll find out after he returns to Washington, that if he can't make progress on this ceasefire effort, which he had originally said he could do in 24 hours, maybe even before he was inaugurated, that he'll walk away from it. I don't think that would change much. The real question is not a continued frustrating effort at the negotiations. The real question is, if that happened, would Trump continue a U.S. military assistance to Ukraine, which at the current levels, it really are vital to Ukraine's capacity to resist the Russian offensive. If Trump did keep those weapons and ammunition and other supplies flowing, then I think Ukraine would be able to resist the Russian forces, and we would just continue to have stalemate on the battlefield.
Ambassador John Bolton, it is always a pleasure to have you on the program. Thank you.